Hello and welcome to another edition of Concussions Anonymous. My name is Khera Monet and I'm with the Opticalm Visual Stress Solutions organization located in Ottawa, Canada. Usually with me is Lisa Khera, the owner of Inbalance Pilates. Unfortunately, she's away today. So it's just me. And today what I'd like to speak to you about on our Concussions Anonymous show is the differences between the visual environment in nature and in our modern urban environment. So our schools and our homes and our stores, and this modern visual environment that people with concussions have more difficulty with after their concussion. So that's what our show will be about today. First off, let's talk about the natural environment. What do we think of when we think of nature? We think of trees and water and mountains and greenery and nice meandering pathways. This natural environment is what our visual system was designed to work in most optimally. So as we evolved, as our vision system has evolved, as our eyes evolved over the millions of years that we've been on our planet, our visual system has become operating best and working best in this natural environment. So the water, the trees, the pathways, the open sky, that is the environment that our visual system is designed to work at optimally. Now when you look at where we spend most of our time, we spend most of our time in a modern urban environment. So that means very geometric patterns, so doorways, window frames, patterned flooring, everything's lined up on the store shelves. Our cars are parked all organized down line. We drive down roadways that are all very left and right, front and back. It's very, very geometric. And our offices are also in that same format. So the natural colors and patterns and features of a natural environment are lacking in this modern environment that we live in. So why this is important to understand is that when somebody has a concussion, when they suffer a head injury, often the visual system becomes overly sensitive to this non-natural environment. And it makes it harder for the visual system to cope in that environment. And what's often said is, if you need to de-stress, what do? You go out and spend time in nature. You spend time on a walk in the forest, with even by having a plant in your office or having artwork of a natural scene has been shown to reduce stress. Now that is because that's what the visual system is designed to work in optimally. To be less stressed is to be in that visual environment. Now, if you've had a concussion and you're having trouble getting back to work, the visual environment in your workplace is triggering this discomfort. It may not have bothered you before, or you may have had slight discomfort with maybe your computer screen or the lighting in your office, and you might have made some modifications or just known that, oh, I'm really not comfortable in that boardroom or that store because of the lighting, but it wasn't enough to put you over the edge, to trigger you such that you couldn't cope anymore. Unfortunately, since you've had your concussion, that visual environment is now too uncomfortable to live in, to work in, to be in. And so therefore you avoid it. You are now on maybe disability from work because you can't get back into your office, and maybe you do heal when you're at home, when you have the opportunity to spend time in nature. But as soon as you get back to the office, you may do a gradual return to work, but every time you go in and you get up to a point where you're in so many hours a day, you get triggered and you have a setback. So those setbacks are often triggered by that overwhelming visual stimuli in the office. So I want to talk a little bit about that in the area of research and what research has shown. I'm going to have some papers linked to on our YouTube channel so that you can go and take a look and read these. Many of them are very technical, but the idea is that not only is it the obvious differences in the natural and the urban environment, like we said, the greenery, the pathways, the meandering feeling of it, as opposed to the rushed, very square, very methodical urban environment. So yeah, there's some obvious things, but there are also some very technical differences that can be studied and shown to be, these are why we have these sensitivities to these items in our unnatural environment. So the three things that they study and they identify as being commonly different are, one is the light, so the source of light. You've got a natural light from the sun that actually follows our circadian circadian rhythm. The color of the lighting in the morning is more of a blue, is more of a, we get the sunrises with the pinks and oranges, but we have a different color of light in the morning when we're waking up and we're getting ready for our day, and a different color of lighting, different frequencies of lighting at the end of the day when we're getting ready to slow down and sleep. And you'll see that on your phone when you can change to day and night. It changes the shade. It's more of a blue shade and then it turns into more of an orange shade. That is natural lighting. That is what is in our environment and what our bodies, not just our eyes, but our visual system, but our whole bodies is designed to work best in. So nature has that. The urban environment doesn't. The urban environment uses lighting, manufactured lighting of many different sources, whether it's fluorescent or LED or a combination of the two, halogen. There are many different types of light sources that aren't naturally produced, they're manufactured. So they don't have the same frequencies of light as the natural light source does. So that's one big difference, is in the lighting itself, okay? Shown to be quite different, and the natural one is what we work with optimally. We can struggle with the unnatural manufactured light. The second thing that is different between the natural environment and the urban environment is something called flicker. Now, we talked a little bit about this in our video on patterns. And I asked Lisa if she had pattern sensitivity, and she said no, she didn't, but she has trouble with things like fans. Well, that is flicker. And actually, when I talk sometimes on these videos, my hands move, and that in it is also flicker. So it is the quick movement of the visual image, and that quick movement is a trigger to discomfort. The natural environment has virtually no flicker. The urban environment has a lot of flicker, and I'm going to go into some of the examples of what each one of these are, so that you, as somebody who may be suffering from light sensitivity, flicker sensitivity, and or pattern and contrast sensitivity, you can look at your visual environment for these items and either take them away, modify them, or do things that can help you visually tolerate those triggers. So the second one is flicker. Now, the natural environment does have some flicker, but very little. So let's talk about what you might experience in the natural environment for flicker. One would be rain and snow. So the falling of rain, that movement, the falling of snow and that movement is something that is flickering. So that the snow and rain is falling, and it is a quick moving item. Now, with a concussion, you might find that very difficult to manage. When it's snowing, you might feel overwhelmed, especially when you're driving, and that is moving actually at you as you're driving. So that is a source of hyperactivation of your brain. It's a source of discomfort, and it's because it's flickering. Flickering in the environment could also be the sun shining through leaves on trees as the trees are moving in the wind. We have had clients that have said, oh, I have so much trouble at the cottage now because I used to love to lie out on the deck or sit out on the deck, but the sun going through the leaves, that flickering movement makes me really uncomfortable. Flicker would also be sunlight on water. And so these are things in the natural environment that, yes, that flicker, but it's not pervasive throughout the natural environment. These are specific things in specific times. So be aware that your sensitivity to those things is because it's flicker and it is triggering a discomfort in your brain. In the urban environment, there is a lot of flicker. Certainly because of lighting, for one, modulating the currents in certain light sources or the gases in things like the fluorescent light. While the lighting systems are set up so that that flicker is not supposed to be noticed by our visual system, it is noticed by people who are hypersensitive because of their concussion or certain neurological or neurodevelopmental issues. So even though coworkers and family members don't notice that flicker, and you may not actually see it, but your visual system is picking that up, and that is triggering your discomfort. So the flicker in the unnatural environment and the unnatural lighting is a constant trigger when you're in those environments. Other signs or other sources of flicker in the unnatural environment, in our urban environments, would be fan blades. So the spinning of a fan, that flickering of a fan, the quick movement of a television show or a movie, the high action or quick action in movies, that is flicker as well. And when you think about your computers, which is also a source of light in the urban workplace environment that can trigger discomfort, there's also flicker with computer screens. So it's the screen, the LCD screen is flickering to refresh itself, to refresh the image, but you are also creating flicker when you scroll on your computer screen. So when you scroll and page down, the images are quickly moving up the screen, and that is a flicker. So that flicker in the unnatural environment is triggering your discomfort. Also, the third thing that is different between the natural environment and the urban environment is the contrast, the color contrast. So our natural environment, it's a more moderate color contrast. We have soft transition from one color to another. We have soft, when you look at the earth itself, it's greens and blues and whites. When you're in natural environment, it could be water or forest, it's greens and blues and whites. Yes, you'll have color with flowers, and yes, you'll have color with rainbows. But when you think about a rainbow is beautiful faded colors that gradually go from one to another in a sky of blues and whites and grays, and, well, if a thunderstorm is coming, also some maybe dark, scary greens. But those shades are very calming, and they're also very, the contrast between them is not very abrupt or sharp. Now that gets us into patterns, because contrast, high contrast of one color to another, can create those visual patterns, which we talked about earlier, which are also a trigger to discomfort. So just to quickly recap, I know that was a lot of information. The natural environment and the visual environment both have elements of light and flicker and color and contrast and patterns. Those three things, so let's call it light, flicker, and contrast, those three things vary quite greatly between the two, in that the natural environment, that amount of light, the type of light, the amount of flicker, the type of flicker, and the amount and type of contrast is a combination that our visual system is designed to work efficiently and comfortably in. When you look at the urban environment, the lighting, the flicker, and the contrast is unnatural and uncomfortable and leads to what we call at Opticalm, and what is in our industry that we deal with, is called visual stress. And visual stress is very common in individuals who have had a concussion, where the visual system is stressed from injury and from trying to rehabilitate and to heal through that injury with all these different therapies, and becoming hypersensitive to these triggers of light, trigger, and contrast and pattern. I'm going to leave you here with that information. I'm going to, on our YouTube channel, I'm going to include links to some of the research papers that talk about the natural versus the unnatural environment, and to give you some hints and tips and a checklist that you could use to help you go through your environment and identify what some of these things are that might be causing discomfort, so that you can then make some changes. So for now, that's Karen Monet signing off for Concussions Anonymous here at Opticalm Visual Stress Solutions. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and good luck with your continued rehabilitation. Thank you.